Bridget, our first ever interaction was when you retweeted a hate article about me from The Nationalist while I was a Sarasota County school student. You are a reminder that some people view politics as a service to others, while some view it as an opportunity for themselves. On this board, you have spent public funds that could have been used to increase teacher pay, to change our district lines for political gain, remove books from schools, target trans and queer children, erase Black history, and elevate your political career, all while sending your children to private schools because you do not believe in the public school system that you've been leading. My question is, why doesn't an elected official using our money to harm our students and our teachers for her gain seem to matter as much to us as her having a threesome does? Bridget Ziegler, you do not deserve to be on the Sarasota County School Board, but you do not deserve to be removed from it for having a threesome. That defeats the lesson we've been trying to teach you, which is that a politician's job is to serve their community, not to police personal lives. So, to be extra clear, Bridget, you deserve to be fired from your job because you are terrible at your job.
How can anyone guarantee that the discussions about sexuality or gender ideology are not going to happen in the classroom? You can't. It's going to happen, and it will violate state statutes. These topics have no place in academics. We can still teach children to be loving, and we can work to prevent bullying without imposing on these social and political topics that are biased and without exposing them to sexuality.
So we talk about not wanting to speak about politics, but why are we talking about this now? Since this has been part of us since 1969, I think it has to do a lot with our politics here in the state of Florida, which has become extremely negative. We are supposed to be all created equal, and everyone is a child of God, made in his image and likeness. And I think it's very, very sad that we're sitting here taking one community, picking them apart, and making them feel like the leopards felt during the time of Christ.
I'm here today to talk about these woke schools that are failing to educate our children. Why aren't we teaching our kids science and math? Is it because we can't pay for science and math teachers after the school superintendent voted to give himself a 40% raise? No! Is it because Moms for Liberty is actively campaigning for school board seats, targeting teachers they don't like? No! Is it because the district is being sued by its own teachers over equal pay? No. The real reason kids aren't learning is socialism. Books don't belong here at all. This is a place of learning. Ban this book, and let's focus on science, math, and raising administrators' pay. Thank you.
Mrs. Smith is the Montgomery County, Maryland chapter chair for Moms for Liberty.
I would like to address, too, the lie that parental groups and Moms for Liberty are book banning. If removing a sexually explicit book from school libraries is what you see as book banning, then we need to reevaluate our language.
More than 7 months ago, our Republican colleagues sat in this hearing room and vehemently denied any interest in addressing the banning of books. Then House Republicans passed a bill they said was about parental rights, but in fact should be called the Politics Over Parents Act because it is essentially a blueprint for book banning. Now today the majority is holding a hearing specifically about what books should or should not be allowed in school libraries, and I'll note that this is the U.S. Congress, not a school board meeting.
The committee hearing today is to hear testimony to examine the prevalence of inappropriate content in libraries in schools. The Biden administration is troubling response and state and local level solutions.
It's my honor to introduce Mrs. Lindsay Smith. She worked as a nurse for 15 years until 2 years ago when she became a full-time at-home mom. She is the mother of 4, author of 2 books, 45 Days of Prayer and Daughter of the King, and she is usually found on a sporting field supporting her kids. Thank you so much for the work you're doing and for being our witness.
I would not expect my child to walk into one of your homes and be able to easily access Playboys or pornographic photos. Yet here we are today discussing the argument of these kind of books being accessible in our public schools library, all in the name of education. Instead of education being the focus, we have completely lost our focus, and now we have an issue of sexually explicit books being accessible to children 3 years and older. Books easily available to children within their own school media centers. One example is an innocent-looking book with bright colors and a puppy dog on the front. To a 3 or 4-year-old, this book is appealing to them, yet the language of this book is far from appropriate. In the Hide and Find glossary, 3 to 4-year-olds are encouraged to find images of leather, drag queen, and underwear. I want you to imagine very briefly with me that your 3-year-old son, with a speech delay, who is in the school for a language delay, comes home with this book and also read it out loud in class. This was my story and one of the reasons I am here before you today. When I found out this was available to my youngest son and would be used as curriculum, this mom began to speak up. Genderqueer is just one of the many examples that parent groups and so-called book banners actually are speaking up against. The sexually explicit and detailed content does not belong in our schools, and we are here asking you to hold the very laws and policies that were created on the very local level. We don't show porn in the name of education to children, and children as young as 3, like my son, were exposed to these books. What will start as library books will flow into the classrooms.
Research shows that as of 2021, more than 4 million students had their freedom to read curtailed because of book bans. That includes students across more than 5,000 schools, 138 school districts in 32 states. Specifically, PEN America found that 41% of banned content focuses on LGBTQI+ themes, protagonists, or characters. 40% focuses on characters of color. Rates of teachers citing burnout and what they feel are unsafe working conditions as a reason for leaving the profession have skyrocketed. At least 7 states have passed draconian laws in the past 2 years, subjecting school librarians to years of imprisonment and fines for providing books deemed to be explicit, obscene, or harmful. That's incarceration. These censorship laws are being enacted by extreme MAGA politicians under the pretext of parental rights, when in reality, it's a coordinated and apparently well-funded vocal minority of parents and conservative organizations pushing their personal agenda on others. We can all agree that books in school libraries should be age appropriate. And we all used to agree that the federal government should not dictate school curricula or what books are in school libraries. Regrettably, it seems that my Republican colleagues have abandoned these previously shared values, although I do note that Superintendent Degenfelder expressly says in her testimony, so how do we solve this issue? It certainly should not be up to the federal government. A book's age appropriateness and its ability to tell challenging, culturally significant stories representing diverse perspectives, those are not mutually exclusive. For example, The Hate You Give is a powerful novel taught in middle and high schools about a young black girl who finds her voice and stands up for racial justice as she grapples with the trauma of witnessing her friend being murdered by police officers. This important book elevates black voices and centers a historic civil rights struggle, but it's been challenged by Republican officials and parents in at least 4 states. I want to remind my colleagues that it is students who are most affected by these policies. Republicans talk about the danger of exposing students to books they deem inappropriate because of their personal values or preferences. But we really need to highlight the danger of ignoring, or worse, erasing history by removing school library books that portray representations of marginalized people, culture, or experiences. Books like Homegoing and The Kite Runner, those are outstanding sort of modern-day works of historical fiction. Books like All Boys Aren't Blue, a captivating memoir. It's affirming for young LGBTQ readers, especially those who are black.
I was in elementary school. I had a teacher who would reward his favorite male students by taking us on camping trips. Sometimes I was such a good student that it would just be me on that camping trip. But now, because of gender ideology, that same teacher isn't allowed within 500 feet of a school. And the police took away his van and confiscated his guns. I'm not ashamed to admit that I love my country, but woke political teaching is making kids hate themselves. When I look around this room, I don't see race. You know, I don't even know what race is. So when you say things like slavery is bad, I'm like, bad for who? The Irish? I brought with me today a book that is available to children of all ages, and in the school's library. This book is filled with overt sexual acts, violence. It celebrates mass killings, and it's being used to indoctrinate our children. A lot of parents here just don't seem to be concerned with the books in our library, so long as it promotes their agenda and brainwashes our kids. I'm going to read you some passages from this book, and you tell me whether or not this book is appropriate for your children. The Lord tried to kill Moses, but Zipporah used a sharpened stone and cut off their son's foreskin and rubbed the bloody ring on Moses' feet, saying, "You are now my bridegroom." This made the Lord leave Moses alone. If a slave owner beats a slave, male or female, with a stick so severely that the slave dies immediately, the slave owner should be punished. However, if the slave survives a day or two, he should get back to work. The slave is the owner's property. The Lord regretted ever creating human beings, and he was sad. So the Lord said, "I will wipe all the human race off the face of the earth. And while I'm at it, I'll kill the livestock and the crawling things too. I'll even kill all the birds in the sky. I wish I'd never created any of them in the first place." Now, do you think a child should be reading this book full of sexual violence and genocide? I hope this book is banned all the way from K through 12. Books don't belong here at all. This is a place of learning. Ban this book, and let's focus on science, math, and raising administrators' pay. Thank you.
Anne.
Hi, my name is Lourdes Diaz. I'm from Pembroke Pines. Welcome to Broward, Dr. Licata. I'm sure you're having a very good time. I want people to understand that this has been part of our culture since 1969. Many, many years that we had, pride parades and looked up to the LGBTQ community. A lot of the people that speak, they come from the Christian community. I'm a Roman Catholic. I grew up in New York. I went to Catholic school. I think that we have that in common. But this is not what Christ was about. Christ never looked down at anyone. Christ was about love, not the Old Testament, the New Testament.
Like the Wizard of Oz, the curtain has been pulled back on Bridget Ziegler. While claiming she was fighting for family values, it is now evident that Bridget and her husband Christian were fighting culture wars for the couple to gain power and money, and to that end, they were very successful. Their income has soared in the last few years. It's not about our kids. While I care not in the least what consenting adults do privately, I do care about the campaign of hate that Bridget was happy to lead in Sarasota, in Florida, and the rest of the country as she trained school board candidates nationwide to repeat her model of disrupting public schools. How many Sarasota parents delighted this week in having to answer the question from their children, what is a three-way? How many suicides have we had nationally because someone did not feel accepted because they were LGBTQ+, disabled, because of the color of their skin, nationality, or religion? How many acts of violence? Bridget, a gay friend of mine told me last week he feels sorry for you and is concerned for your mental health. He said he knows what it feels like to be attacked by all sides. He hoped you would resign to begin to heal for yourself and your family. Your children deserve privacy that will only be obtained when you and your husband remove yourself from the public positions that hold you, that amplify your hypocrisy. You see, even some of those that you attacked are able to see the humanity, equality, and worth of everyone, even you. Sarasota schools deserve an end to the culture wars you led, and sadly, many board members followed.